The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly. Friedrich Nietzsche. Today's world doesn't want strong men, it wants obedient ones. That's the truth nobody wants to admit. From the moment you were born, something quietly began shaping you, not into a leader, not into a warrior, not into someone who commands fear or admiration, but into something much safer, something manageable, predictable, harmless. You were taught that being strong is toxic, that being assertive is problematic, and that being dangerous in any form makes you the villain. And you believed it. Because they didn't destroy you with violence, they destroyed you with shame. But why would a society raise its men to be weak? Why would a culture, one that claims to value success, courage, and leadership, train its young men to hate everything that produces those things? The answer is brutal, because your strength is a threat. Not to everyone, just to those who've built power by ensuring that men like you never fully wake up. If you stay quiet, polite, submissive, and agreeable, you won't challenge the new order. You won't threaten the fragile egos and manipulative systems that can only survive in the absence of true strength. You'll smile, apologize, overthink every word, and slowly die inside. That's the new masculinity, pleasant, polite, and utterly powerless. Once upon a time, men were forged through hardship. Their worth wasn't measured by how nice they were, but by how dangerous they could become and still choose control, discipline, ambition, defiance. Those weren't signs of toxic masculinity. They were signs of a man becoming something great, but somewhere along the way, greatness became suspicious. Now, we live in a world where comfort is the new virtue, compliance is the new strength, and anyone who shows fire is labeled a threat. The modern man has been reprogrammed. He apologizes for being direct. He flinches at confrontation. He shrinks in the presence of real competition. And worst of all, he doesn't even know why he feels so empty. He thinks it's burnout or anxiety or bad luck, but it's not. It's the quiet agony of living with a caged instinct of having a lion's hunger and being told to eat grass. And that feeling you have, that low, constant sense that something's missing in your life, it's not just in your head. It's your body remembering what it was built for. You weren't made to obey. You weren't made to please. You were made to test yourself, to sharpen your will, to speak even when your voice shakes, and to hold the line when everyone else folds. But no one will hand that version of you back, because that version of you is dangerous. And in a world built on mediocrity and emotional manipulation, dangerous men are the enemy. So what did they do? They changed the story. They made kindness your duty. They made obedience your moral compass. And they sold you a lie that to be good, you must first become weak. And you went along with it because at some point, being accepted felt more important than being free. But let me ask you something. Has your obedience earned you respect? Has your sensitivity made you feel powerful? Has playing it safe made you proud of the man you've become? Because here's the thing, deep down, you already know the answer. And the moment you stop lying to yourself is the moment everything starts to shift. This isn't about becoming a tyrant. It's about becoming whole. It's not about domination. It's about reclaiming what was stolen from you, your fire, your edge, your unapologetic presence. A man doesn't have to be cruel to be powerful. But he does have to stop being afraid of his own strength. Because the world doesn't need more nice guys. It needs men who've remembered who they are and who refuse to die with their power still dormant inside them. Weak people don't always stay quiet. They wait, they observe, And when they realize they can't win through strength, they try to win through guilt. That's how resentment works. It doesn't aim to rise above, it aims to pull others down. Look around you. Power is no longer something you earn. It's something you're accused of having. Success is no longer admired, it's suspicious. Masculine traits like confidence, ambition, stoicism, dominance, they used to be virtues. Now they're seen as red flags. How did that happen? Because weakness, when left unhealed, doesn't stay passive. It turns bitter. It turns moral. It starts whispering, if I can't have what he has, then what he has must be wrong. This is the core of modern morality. Envy dressed up as virtue. It doesn't say, become better. It says, make better look evil. It doesn't challenge you to grow. It shames you for standing tall. And the result? The strong feel guilty for being strong. The masculine feel ashamed for being masculine. The competent are forced to apologize not for failing, but for succeeding. This is not random. It's a power play. When the weak cannot rise, they reframe the game. They redefine the rules. And the first thing they target is morality, because morality is the easiest tool to weaponize. It's invisible. It's emotional. And if you control the story of what is good and bad, you can manipulate people without ever lifting a finger. Just plant the right shame and watch the strong destroy themselves. So the message becomes, if you speak too boldly, you're arrogant. If you stand your ground, you're aggressive. If you chase success, you're oppressive. If you win, you must have cheated. You see it everywhere now in schools, in the workplace, online. Men are walking on eggshells. They've internalized this inverted morality so deeply that they second-guess everything. Their tone, their posture, their opinions, even their desires. They don't trust their instincts anymore because they've been taught that their instincts are dangerous. But ask yourself, who benefits when you distrust your strength? Who wins when you silence yourself? Who gains power every time you shrink? It's not the strong. It's the ones who convinced you that strength is something to be ashamed of. Resentment. Nietzsche's word for this kind of deep, bitter envy doesn't just hate the powerful. It wants to redefine power itself. It can't kill the lion, so it convinces the jungle that the lion is evil. It can't reach the mountaintop, so it convinces the world that the mountain is a dangerous place. And soon, everyone starts celebrating mediocrity as morality and calling cowardice compassion. If this content makes sense to you, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Thank you. But here's the truth. Real morality doesn't come from fear. It doesn't come from envy. It doesn't come from the weak trying to handicap the strong. It comes from self-mastery, from strength held in check, from power that chooses discipline. But if you've never had power, you don't understand what it means to restrain it. You confuse submission with virtue because you've never tasted the alternative. And this is where so many men get lost. They want to be good, but they don't realize that the definition of good they've been given is a trap. It was built to tame them, not to free them. It was designed to protect others from them, not to protect them from themselves. So if you feel like something's off, like the version of manhood you were sold is incomplete or fake, trust that feeling. It's not dysfunction. It's your deeper self warning you. You were not made to be harmless. You were made to be whole. And no system of fake morality can define that for you, because real goodness can only come from real power. And real power never comes from resentment, it comes from rising above it. The strongest men were not defeated by stronger men. They were disarmed emotionally, one wound at a time. Not with war, not with logic, not even with resistance, but with three precise tools: fear, pity, and desire. When power can't be crushed head-on, it must be softened. That's the strategy. And what softens a man faster than the fear of being rejected, the guilt of not helping, or the longing to be wanted? Fear was the first attack. Not fear of death or battle, fear of being judged. Men today are terrified of being labeled the wrong thing: toxic, dangerous, misogynist, emotionally unavailable. So what do? They fold. They speak more gently, walk more carefully, think twice before expressing anything too bold. Not because they've evolved, but because they've been taught that strength will get them punished. Next came pity. No man wants to feel like a monster. So when someone cries, breaks down, or plays helpless, his instincts kick in: protect, provide, soften. It's noble at first, but over time it becomes manipulation. Because some people don't want your help, they want your surrender. They weaponize their own weakness to control you, and you comply, thinking you're being kind when in reality you're just being neutralized. And then, of course, there's desire. The oldest trick in the book, the promise of intimacy, the glance, the suggestion, the approval. For many men, the need to be wanted is stronger than the will to be free. So they trade their edge for affection. They water themselves down for a smile. They betray their instincts in exchange for attention. And the cost? Their strength, their voice, their dignity. But here's the catch. None of these tactics work on powerful men unless those men are already unsure of themselves. Unless they have been raised to believe that female approval defines their worth. Unless they think that being accepted is more important than being authentic. This is how you break a generation without firing a single shot. You don't challenge their bodies, you confuse their minds. You don't chain them, you seduce them. And once they associate their masculinity with guilt, discomfort, and rejection, they begin to amputate themselves voluntarily. That's how power dies in a man. Not suddenly, but in small, quiet acts of surrender. He stops speaking his mind. He avoids conflict. He downplays his ambition. He apologizes for being intense. He laughs off what really bothers him. He thinks he's being mature, but really he's just afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of being hated. Afraid of being unloved. So he silences the fire in him just to feel safe in a cold world. And guess what? No one respects him for it. They use him. They like how tame he's become. But deep down, they don't admire him. Because even they know a man who trades his power for comfort is not a man you follow. He's just a man you manage. Now listen carefully. This doesn't mean you should become cruel or numb. You can still be kind. You can still love. But if your kindness is driven by fear, or your love is driven by desperation, it's not strength. It's self-erasure. True power is not the absence of emotion. It's the ability to feel deeply without being ruled. It's knowing when to open your heart and when to draw the line. It's seeing manipulation and walking away without explanation. Because men who know their worth don't negotiate it. They don't need to perform. They don't beg for love. They don't fear being misunderstood. They live with fire in their chest and peace in their mind. Not because they're heartless, but because they remember what the world forgot, that some men are not meant to be softened. Some men are meant to stand firm even when the world trembles around them. The fall of masculinity didn't happen because women fought harder. It happened because men surrendered. Not all at once, not in one great collapse, but in 1,000 quiet decisions to be less than they are for approval they never truly received. No one forced them to kneel. They chose it. They saw the strong being mocked, shamed, excluded. And instead of standing beside them, they distanced themselves. They said, "I'm not like those guys." They played nice. They kept their heads down. They became useful. Useful to whom? To a system that needed obedience, to a culture that needed men who would never push back, to women who said, "You're safe," while secretly craving someone who wasn't. That's the great irony. The more a man tries to be accepted by rejecting his strength, the less anyone truly respects him. He thinks being the good guy will earn him loyalty. He thinks being soft will make him lovable, but all it does is make him invisible. Because here's the ugly truth, and you felt it in your gut. You were easier to control when you betrayed yourself. You became a pawn in someone else's strategy. Not by force, but because you thought losing your edge would earn you a place at the table. You became the man who turned on his own brothers. You joined the chorus against the strong. You adopted the new language, the new morality, the new code, not because you believed in it, but because you feared being outcast. And that fear made you useful. Useful in every movement that needed men to silence other men. Useful in every system that required enforcers, not leaders. Useful in every scenario where truth had to be softened, power diluted, fire extinguished. They called it progress, but deep down, you knew it was regression. Because you weren't rising, you were retreating. And in that retreat, you became something tragic, a man ashamed of his own potential. You started policing other men, telling them to calm down, be nicer, be less problematic. Not because you disagreed with them, but because their courage reminded you of your own cowardice. And that was too painful to face. So you joined the mob, you pointed the finger, you helped tear down the very qualities you once admired, all to avoid being targeted yourself. That's how betrayal works. It doesn't always feel like betrayal in the moment. It feels like survival. It feels like fitting in. It feels like being smart. Until one day, you look in the mirror and realize you don't even recognize yourself anymore. You gave up your fire for safety and got neither. You silenced your voice and still weren't heard. You softened your spine and still weren't chosen. You lost your edge and no one came to thank you for it. Because you weren't meant to be liked. You were meant to be remembered. There's a reason the great men of history weren't universally adored. They were criticized, feared, mocked, but they were real, and that's why they're still spoken of today. The men who tried to be perfect, who played it safe, who never stood for anything unless it was trending. No one remembers their names because they never lived fully enough to leave a mark. So let me ask you, what kind of man are you becoming? One who trades power for peace? Or one who understands that peace without power is just surrender? You don't need to become violent, but you do need to stop betraying the part of you that was born to lead, to speak, to fight for truth even when it costs you comfort. You've betrayed yourself long enough, and the world has suffered for it. Not because you weren't good enough, but because you chose to become less than you are. It's time to come back. Not to what society wants from you, but to what you were before the world told you to hide. Because strength isn't dangerous. Repressed strength is, and the longer you ignore it, the louder it will scream until it burns everything around you. No one's coming to save you. No system, no woman, no ideology. Because the truth is they were never meant to. You were supposed to save yourself, and somewhere inside, you still know how. That voice you've been ignoring, the one that tells you you're wasting your time, your strength, your potential. That's not anxiety. That's the flame trying to reignite. But here's the first truth you need to accept. You can't recover your power by playing it safe. You won't find your edge by reading more self-help books or waiting for the perfect moment. You'll find it when you step into discomfort, when you stop asking for permission, when you start doing what scares you not recklessly, but relentlessly. Because the path back to strength is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world taught you to hide. You were not born to be passive. You were not designed to be tame. And the parts of you that feel too much, your intensity, your ambition, your defiance, those errant flaws, they're signals. They're reminders of the fire you've tried to bury under years of politeness and performance. It's time to dig it up. But understand this, becoming dangerous again isn't about rage. It's about discipline. It's not about dominating others. It's about mastering yourself. Because power without control is chaos, but control without power is slavery. And you've lived long enough in that cage, smiling, pleasing, second-guessing every move, hoping that if you just played nice enough, the world would reward you. But it didn't. It punished you. It passed you over. It forgot you. So now, you have a choice. You can keep shrinking, keep faking, keep telling yourself that comfort is enough. Or you can rise. Quietly, privately. No announcement, no applause. Just a decision. I will not live like this anymore. That's how it starts. Not with revenge, not with a scream, but with resolve. You get strong again, not for others, but for yourself. You stop waiting for someone to crown you. You crown yourself. You rebuild your body because strength matters. You rebuild your voice because truth matters. You rebuild your spirit because the world doesn't need more numb men. It needs men who feel deeply and act clearly. So be the man who stands when it's easier to sit. Be the man who speaks when silence would be safer. Be the man who walks alone, not because he wants to, but because the path to greatness rarely comes with company. And yes, you will lose people. You will be misunderstood. You will be called intense, cold, arrogant. Let them say what they will, because the man who has found his fire again doesn't need validation. He is no longer starving for scraps of approval. He walks into rooms without shrinking. He leads without needing to be liked. He protects without asking for praise. And maybe most important of all, he never apologizes for being powerful. You want to change your life? Start by becoming a man the world can't ignore. Not because you're loud, but because you carry something real again, something heavy, something sacred, danger. Not the danger of destruction, but the danger of truth, the danger of presence, the danger of a man who no longer fears himself. So no, this isn't about going back. This is about becoming whole. The world told you to be soft. It told you to be agreeable. It told you to hide your strength. Now it's your turn to answer. To rise with fire in your eyes and calm in your heart. To become the kind of man who doesn't ask what he's allowed to be, but who decides, with brutal clarity, who he is. And when you get there, you won't need to prove anything to anyone. You'll just walk differently, speak differently, live differently, and the world will feel it.